Welcome to ChiefPricingOfficer.com. Most CEOs think they understand pricing, and most boards assume it's under control. And unfortunately, both are usually wrong. Pricing is the single most powerful lever in business, yet in most organizations, it's not managed, it's tolerated. It shows up when margins miss, it shows up during inflation, it shows up when something breaks. But then it's already too late, because the best companies don't use pricing to react to performance, they use it to shape their business. So the real question isn't what is your price, it is when does pricing become important enough to make it to the boardroom? And more importantly, what do boards actually get wrong when they finally start paying attention? Well, that's what we're going to be unpacking today. I'm joined by Gale Kurtoglu, board member, operating executive, and advisor who's spent her career at the intersection of pricing, commercial excellence, and enterprise value. And today we're going to challenge 10 of the most common myths CEOs still believe about pricing and talk about the 5 moments when pricing stops being tactical and becomes a board level issue. Gale, it's great to have you. Good to see you. What's exciting in the pricing world?
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be with you today on this podcast. So what I'm seeing right now is a shift from growth at all costs to a much sharper focus on margin and quality of revenue. At the same time, there's a lot of investment in AI and pricing tools, but the real challenge is execution, especially around discounting and consistency, which brings us to our myths, the 10 myths about pricing.
Wow, I'm looking forward to it. So without further ado, let's get to those 10 myths about pricing. If it's okay with you, I'll set them up and you knock them down. Okay?
Sounds good. It's a team effort.
All right, fantastic. CEO myth number 1, pricing is just a finance problem.
Yes, this one is a common myth. In reality, pricing is a cross-functional leadership issue. If pricing lives in one box on the org chart, margin leakage usually lives everywhere else. Just as a lived example, I was working for a global B2B company where finance owned pricing, but sales control discounting. And you end up with inconsistent pricing, unexplained margin leakage, and then team that continuously does this.
That's right. And I've seen a number of companies, especially in mid-market or PE port codes, that believe that pricing sits in one spot and can be solved in one spot. And I tell you what, it is at that intersection and it must be actively managed. And if it's done by a pricing function, something that's very junior, it doesn't get the attention, nor does it align with the way that the organization incents itself when it thinks about how the company is actually structured, a business model. Well, let's move on. Myth number 2, pricing really only matters when inflation is high.
Well, yes, that's another one of those myths. In reality, inflation makes pricing visible, not important. It is always important. So it enables our ability to perceive the value of the services, of the goods, and the solutions that we're getting from a company. So I would say that I came across like stable costs businesses that are still seeing like margin erosion due to mix shift and aggressive discounting. So even in a very simple business, you can really see a lot of advantages of managing pricing appropriately. And as the complication goes up from product plus service model to software model to software as service, then even the complication of pricing and the value proposition and the way that we charge, the charging metric will go up with it.
So it's not that the pain, it's not that we wait for the pain to become acute. The pain is already there and it needs to be solved. Let's not wait for some global event in order to fix it. Moving on, myth number 3. Pricing is really all about raising prices, right? What's the reality?
Great pricing is about value architecture and not just price increase. And we can also think about great pricing as not charging more, but it's about getting paid for providing better value that is already created. And also an organizational glue across our agents that take our products and services to markets. What I'm talking about are distributors, wholesalers, all of our channel partners. We enable them through rebates, through pricing and discounting.
Right. And so now you're using that V word, value, which means that the entire supply chain or the entire commercial set can speak about the same thing, and that is the value that a customer or client sees that we can surround by price. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Fantastic. Next myth, number 4. If revenue is growing, pricing must be working. What's the reality?
The reality is revenue can grow while pricing destroys value. I have seen time and again this in technology. You have high growth technology businesses that are discounting deals and providing poor terms. So when the growth then levels, that's when you have CCOs or CEOs that are really at that point finding what's going on, what's under the surface. So definitely boards and CEOs, CXOs should care about the quality of revenue and not just the quantity.
Quality of revenue. That's a phrase that should be used throughout the entire C-suite. Do I have that right?
Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Quality of revenue. Well, that follows on to the next myth, number 5. Discounting is just part of winning business, isn't it? What's the reality?
The reality is chronic discounting is usually a management system issue. It's not about winning business. Discounting is often not a market problem, it's a management system problem and a governance problem.
Take me a little bit deeper on that one. How do you identify that it's a management problem and what do you do about it?
Mhm. So, one of the first things to realize is discounting is cultural. So, when it becomes cultural, then you would need visibility, reality, and data to really enable the sales teams to leverage more than just price to win. And that's when discounting can get under control. And if we have data and visibility and a clear guidance in the form of a clear delegation of authority, that's when we can put together a management system that can enable the sales teams and not hinder it.
Ah, this helps us avoid the situation that I call guppies and whales, where somebody says, well, I have to take a deep discount here because this customer is a guppy, but it's going to grow into a whale. And what we find is by putting a system in place that juvenile guppies become adult guppies. They don't become whales. And we've got to do something about the discounting that was given away in the past. Okay. Number 6. The myth is pricing is way too tactical for a board to pay attention to. What's the reality?
There's a saying about the boards, and when you become a new board member, nose in, fingers out. So, which is again here, when we think about pricing, boards should not really manage price points. That's not even possible. But there is a duty, a fiduciary duty of the board to really think about governance. How do we govern the economics? If you take pricing completely out of the equation, then we're really leaving an important economic lever out of the equation. So boards don't need to manage price points, but they need to govern the economics of pricing.
Does that also mean that we need to think differently about pricing, that pricing truly is an economic lever that is woven into the overall business model?
Absolutely. So the price that we see, price points, are just a manifestation of that model. I think it is the duty of the board to manage all the aspects of pricing, including legal aspects and functional aspects, and that we would, just like any other aspect of that board would get involved about. If we have a supply chain shock, then boards will be involved with that. If we have a cybersecurity attack, right, boards will be involved with that. If we have a huge economic shock that manifests itself with inflation, well, you cannot leave that out just because it's pricing, right?
Right. Let's take that to another level, and that's about business performance. Here's the next myth, number 7. A successful price increase means we must have pricing maturity, right?
Well, a one-time increase is not a capability. So I think a price increase is an event, but pricing maturity is more than an event. It's a capability. We can think about pricing as a lever of strategy. This is where it ties to the business model. We can think about pricing metric itself. Is it the right metric, or should we be thinking about a different pricing metric, meaning what do we charge for? Then we can think about the teams and their capabilities in terms of managing pricing in the way that is most opportunistic and that provides the best profitability for the company. And we can think about the systems that enable pricing, whether it's the software or the AI or the whole workflow around pricing that is really governing the ecosystem. So again, a price increase is just an event. It's only like turning the corner around a really long labyrinth.
Right. Very good. Okay. Well, now we're coming to the myth that is the most timely of them all. Number 8. AI will solve pricing. What's the reality?
Well, we can leverage AI to optimize pricing inputs, but AI is not going to replace judgment or governance. In reality, AI can actually also optimize and accelerate bad pricing systems faster. So we can kind of go to hell on wheels in a much faster way, or lose profitability or lose market position. So it doesn't, if this underlying system is broken, it will act as a facilitator and lead into bad outcomes faster. But it can also be used to really optimize our ability to sense the market, our ability to segment our customers, which we have been doing for years. AI, in one shape or another, has been used along with pricing software for a couple of decades now. It was one of the first use cases in usage of AI. So, and it will continue to accelerate and to enable pricing. But AI is not a solution to pricing. It's not the function that can. It's not a capability that can answer a pricing question.
So it will help. It's just not going to take over.
Correct. It's an enabler, but not doesn't provide full automation by itself.
Fantastic. Coming up on myth number 9. Pricing sophistication is mainly for SaaS and e-commerce. What's the reality?
The reality is some of the biggest opportunities that I have seen are in industrials, in medtech, in services, aftermarket, and distribution. In many industrial businesses, pricing is the most under-governed source of margin. And as we think about it, industrial businesses in themselves are enabled through service, through project management, and increasingly through software. and analytics. So yes, SaaS and e-commerce are new, the first poster children of pricing capability. But pricing sophistication can be leveraged across many different industries and many different use cases.
We're coming up to myth 10. And the last one on the list here is pricing. That's a quarterly lever. What's the reality?
Well, the reality is the business doesn't happen by quarter. The business happens every day and every minute. So pricing shapes the business model and long-term value every minute. So the best companies don't use pricing to secure a quarter. They use pricing to shape the future of the business every minute, every day.
So it's not something we review from a performance perspective. It's something that is part of the care and feeding of the overall business model.
Absolutely. And if you think about invention, like the whole invention cycle, I think it goes hand in hand with as we formulate the value proposition of a new invention, let's say a new widget or a new capability or a new piece of software, we need to think about pricing from all the way from there to really come up with the right way of innovating and launching the value proposition or the product into the market.
Well said. Okay, now we're going to turn our sights a little bit onto not just pricing leadership, but when pricing leadership requires the attention of the board. And I want to thank you, Gale, for bringing this one up a level, because pricing, given all of the turbulence and all of the upheaval that's going on right now, I think our listeners are going to be very interested in what triggers pricing being discussed by the board. One way is when margin pressure persists despite healthy demand.
Yes, a time to look into pricing as a potential topic at the board level will be if the revenue is holding, but gross margin and EBITDA is slipping. This is a pure indication, can be an important indication of leaking value. So while again we talked about board not really concerning themselves with price points, this is a scenario where as a board member we will have the opportunity to really bring this as a hypothesis and help our CEO and CXO partners to be able to solve potential issues and bring profitability to bear as a result of it.
That's great. I've got one example of that that rings true in my mind. A company that allowed its sales force to do whatever it took to continue to win share of the marketplace. And in doing so, over time, revenues were creeping up slowly, but margin was actually falling off quickly. At which point there had to be a rethink of whether or not the company had saturated the market using its current methods as much as possible and needed to start thinking about taking profit rather than taking share. Is that a good example?
Yeah, that's a great example. We can also see similar trends when a company is taken over by private equity. And if, for example, because this happens all the time with publicly traded companies, the whole behavior around sacrificing price to secure the quarter, as we discussed previously. But as a result of that, if the company is taken over by private equity, that will be a great time to really address as a board member to bring out the topic to make sure that we're not, again, we're holding the revenue quality and not just focusing on the quantity.
Great insight. Next trigger to bring pricing to the board is when the company is changing its business model or its monetization model. Can you say more about that?
Absolutely. So there are various situations under which, driven by either technological advancements or new trends, new demographic trends, the whole business model could be under stress. And the company might decide to go from a product business model to a product plus service business model, which is very has happened all across industrials, across medtech, across many different industries, or going from let's say a service business model to a subscription business model, going from a license business model to, again, subscription business model, from a fixed fee to a usage base, or from a hardware to a software plus data plus services business model. All of these business model changes, either driven by technology or another event, they are underlying pricing metric changes. At the end of the day, we are changing our thinking about the metric for which we are charging our customer, or the frequency with which we're charging our customer. Of course, we need to have the right systems, right technology, right data to be able to do that. But at the end of the day, this is a board level topic because the stakes are high. In such a transformation, we can actually lose customers, we can lose momentum, or alternatively, we can gain a lot. We can gain customers, we can gain momentum.
Gale, so what is a solid example of a changing business or monetization model?
Well, there are various examples, but one that we all have lived through is in the software industry. Back in the days, we used to buy software as a physical product, as you would remember, as a floppy disk actually, or a CD. So we're talking about the product business model. So the pricing metric at the time was X many dollars for that disk or floppy disk or CD. Then we moved on to an enterprise agreement model where we would base it on the numbers of employees and have a 3-year long agreement that we would look into and make sure that the product is deployed by the first year and a half. And then if it wasn't deployed, then we would panic as a software company. Then, with Office 365 and the usage model, we pivoted towards not just seats or employees, but the usage-based business model, either minutes or having the numbers of users in that particular product suite. Then some companies took it to the revenue based on advertising-based business model that upfront is free, but then we're charging based on either eyeballs or a particular action, like click-through action. And now there is all kinds of ways that we're monetizing software, either through tokens or advertising or having the consumption-based business model. So every one of those twists and turns, and this happened within the matter of 2 decades, I believe. So it was a pretty compressed timeline. So if you're not paying attention to that business model change and it's tied to pricing and pricing metric, then as a board, you're on the back foot. And we should also be watching out of like, how do our competitors do it? And what is the concurrent model of software as a service or software pricing that is what's accepted in the market by the investors, by the customers, and by us.
Absolutely. We have to keep our eyes open on this one because I have heard the word experimentation used so often lately, especially given AI and now the tokenization of pricing, that it's difficult to understand the value being delivered and the token model that goes along with it, because while it seems to be more equitable, it's very difficult from a planning perspective and a projecting exactly what the revenue stream is going to look like. And so many clients I'm working right now are trying to balance this notion of, well, what value are they receiving versus what utility or utilization they are, sort of like when you plug your lamp into the wall. Is it showing enough light? It's very difficult to get around these new business models, and quite frankly, that is a board level concern, and it's going to be one, I think, for the near future. Getting involved early is the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
Because I've seen a number of examples that have come across my desk in the last 6 months or so, where
Mhm.
the companies themselves don't necessarily realize the impact in change of the business model. I've been approached, asked to do some optimization work, asked to do some price and packaging work to repackage. But quite frankly, it's about changing the business model itself, because the marketing is going to change, the revenue and cash flow model is going to change,
Mhm.
the skills of those that are out in the field selling are going to change, and ultimately the expectations of the finance office, the change in the sales office and how they're measured and incented, and ultimately from a marketing perspective, how the company is going to market is going to change. And while each one of the silos, I don't mean to be pejorative in that, but yes, marketing and sales, operations and finance operate to optimize themselves. An entire model change is coming when somebody says, I'd like to shift from my traditional transaction model to something that looks a little more like SaaS or subscription.
Absolutely.
Okay. This is one of my favorites. We need to get the board's attention when discounting becomes cultural. What does that mean?
So we talked earlier about when we were going through the myths about the management system that's needed to shepherd pricing. So if we take a laissez-faire, laissez-passer approach to pricing, then it's awfully easy for the sales teams to really pull on that lever to bring in revenue. But then when discounting becomes cultural, then every quarter would depend on exceptions, escalations, and margin givebacks. So pricing is then becomes a governance issue.
Mm.
So who better to weigh in on governance issues than the board, right? At the end of the day, we need to make sure that this is not a habit, that we are discounting for the right reasons, and that we're not taking the shortcut. If you continue to do that, then this is where companies kind of fall into like going from being publicly traded down into the being purchased by private equity and then re-engineered around value.
So, Gail, what do you see as the best artifact to bring to the CEO or to the board level to show them that, in fact, discounting has become cultural?
Well, if we see majority of the deals being closed in the last week of the quarter, and the discount level um, reaching maximum heights in the let's say last 5 business days of that quarter, along with the flip side profitability dipping at the very end of the quarter, that's a great visual indication that discounting is cultural.
Great. Okay, let's move on. Um, Number 4, M&A, portfolio shifts, or post-merger integration are underway.
Yes, this is another scenario where pricing becomes critical when integrating acquisitions, rationalizing SKUs, harmonizing price books, and repositioning offerings. So at the end of the day, you have the whole process around due diligence, target identification, when an M&A activity is undertaken. And there are various assumptions that would result into the value for which that asset is acquired. But if you're like at the post-integration stage, this is where the rubber meets the road. Some of those assumptions might be incorrect, especially as we're looking at pricing. And if you're not careful, we might really either be leaving money on the table or really actively destroying the value of the asset that we just acquired, if we don't pay attention to, what does the acquisition mean from both a value proposition and also pricing, discounting, and rebate standpoint, when we merge the entities. At the end of the day, we want complementary and not value destruction. And it's very easy to go to value destruction if you don't pay attention to pricing.
So are you saying that it should be brought to the board's attention as the acquisition starts into its post-merger integration efforts?
So what I'm saying is there has to be a mechanism for governance around the pricing integration. And it's not a topic that's going to take care of itself. It has to be actively managed and shepherded.
Absolutely. I have seen so much value destroyed in post-merger integration activity that the customers at the end of the integration have actually been conditioned to take lower prices because that was part of the of this unmanaged, ungoverned pricing process to make sure that the integration worked. And once you've got a customer that is conditioned for pricing in a particular way, moving them off of that is so much harder, so much harder. Excellent.
Absolutely. I think this is one of the reasons why the value that was promised with the M&A activity might not be realized.
You bet. And then the final reason to get pricing in front of the board is when pricing creates a legal or regulatory or reputational risk, including litigation. Say more about that.
Yes, this is the sort of red light scenario, right? So we're getting in trouble as a company. There's a lot of risk. There's a lot of responsibility, and we need to make certain decisions to protect the company and its interests. So I have seen this in a number of ways. So there's like this price discrimination terminology, which sounds horrific, but it is basically pricing, right? At the end of the day, pricing is a discipline of adjusting value for different customer segments. But if you're not careful with that, there could be scenarios where a particular type of customer, either because of age or other characteristics, if they keep getting the same level of price compared to other groups, there can be legal action taken because of discrimination. The perfect example would be age-based pricing, right? If you're actually increasing price on a particular group of customers because of their age and or because of their race. So those are really critical red lights that can get us into trouble as a company. Now, moving on from that would be being opportunistic when we shouldn't be. During COVID, as I'm sure you remember, we had horrific situations where masks were marked up, sometimes double, triple digit increases, or critical medical equipment. Obviously, this is a pricing opportunity, but we need to put our moral hat on to say, should we be taking this? I mean, what are the ethics around this price increase? And finally, I would say there is the whole sort of regulatory aspect where, as a global company, we might be doing business across various different countries. And different countries have different regulations, and specifically different countries have different regulations about price. So we need to be sensitive that what can be perfectly legitimate in the US might not fly in France or in Germany. So we need to look at this in connection with the legal counsel and really issue the right type of, let's say, guardrails by country that are aligned with the regulatory regime in that jurisdiction. So again, reputational risk as well. I mean, again, right now we're living in a very connected world. A mistake around ethics can be across all of the social media outlets, and it can really ruin the reputation of our company, and the value of the business goes along with it.
Wow, that is a lot to consider when thinking about pricing and elevating it in terms of its visibility to the board. How often in the companies that you've been serving should pricing be on that quarterly agenda for a board?
So as much as it's needed. I mean, again, we can create lawsuits, customer disputes, channel conflict, and a lot of backlash. So it doesn't hurt to touch upon it on a regular basis, and having dashboards and reporting that could indicate hotspots before they become problematic, before we're exposing the company to a lawsuit. That's the best time to act, and not being on the back foot when it happens.
So, as a price leader speaking to other price leaders, um, would you recommend that our price leadership actually create something that's a little bit more forward looking than reactive when interacting with our senior staff?
Absolutely. Again, I encourage all pricing leaders to think about addressing various levels in the organization. And the board should be in there, CEO, CXOs should be in there. And of course, our commercial organization should be in there along with our customers. So at the end of the day, pricing is a topic for all of those audiences. And who better to talk about pricing than the pricing leader? Again, we live in a very connected world that is prone to shocks. And it doesn't hurt be to anticipate change and to take the actions that will also improve both the positioning as well as the value of the pricing team to the board and to the senior executives. That would also bring them the visibility that they need to be successful in their to overcome the challenges that they need to overcome.
Gail, that is really well said. To be the voice, the solid voice that is the connector among all of these pieces and all of the levels within the organization is the responsibility of the price leader. And I think you've encapsulated it in a way that all of us should take a step back and ponder how it is we're actually serving our entire organization, given that there are changes that are pushing on us externally, potential changes in our business model, potential changes in what could be the reputation of how price is not only portrayed, but actually communicated around this social environment, and ultimately looking out for the health of the business. I think this has been a great session, Gail, and I thank you for bringing these points in a very clear way that we can take a look at them and go back and consider for ourselves. Thank you.